Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Monday Live Show with Alan and Greg and our guest, Kaitlin from
Hi.
Dandy's Books. So, how is
Hello.
everyone doing tonight? I know Kaitlin was saying that they're getting rain in Las Vegas.
Yeah, it's been gray and rainy. It was dry all winter, so we're super happy about the rain out here. I'm get it for a couple days and I'm gonna enjoy it. Soon enough it'll be 150
Yeah,
degrees. So gotta
exactly.
yep.
I know Vegas pretty well. I mean, I did time in Phoenix. No, I spent a lot of time in Phoenix, like 20 years worth, and we used to just fly to Vegas all the time, like 20 minutes away.
Mhm.
I like playing craps. I got this tattoo in Vegas.
Nice.
Yeah, I like this. And Laughlin, Nevada,
Mhm.
I all up there, but.
We're kind of the opposite. We actually head out to Arizona quite often for little vacations. We get out to Flagstaff and Sedona because we hike a lot. So
Yeah, great.
yeah.
Mount Lemon, that's
Yeah.
Flagstaff, right?
I don't think I've
I
done
love
that
Flag.
one. We did Wallapai recently, and what's the biggest peak? We've done a couple of the bigger peaks out there that are in the ski resorts, but yeah, hopefully.
I commented on a video of yours today about hiking the Grand Canyon. Yeah, I've done that in the South Rim like half a dozen times at least
Nice.
back in
I'm
the day. Yeah,
I'm hoping to do rim to rim one of these days, but it's quite the
yeah,
expedition.
the 24-hour one, or just rim to rim. Yeah,
Yeah,
they have a steakhouse. They used to have a steakhouse down there by the Colorado River, like midpoint. Yeah, I like the North Rim too in the wintertime. I like it. Just to look at it.
It's a beautiful site. Yeah.
So Kaitlin, do you do day hikes or do you do overnight hikes when you're going out?
I do both. We do a lot of daytime hiking. We do what's called scrambling a lot, which is kind of a hybrid of rock climbing and hiking. So we'll go out and kind of scramble up the side of a peak, hit the peak, and then scramble back down. Those will be our day stuff. But I actually really enjoy backpacking as well. And when my partner and I have time to do a overnight backpack or a multi-day backpack, we absolutely do. So it's mostly just work constraints because we have different days off right now, so we don't always have enough time for the longer stuff at the moment.
Yeah, I have not done an overnight. I used to do some backpacking back when I was really young, and I remember we did one in Sierra Nevada, and that was a 6-day hike where you had to just
Wow.
Well, it was fun. The only difference is that we were supposed to have each day go hike to a new location. And the second day we got this lake was really nice. And I kind of looked at my friend and go, do you really want to find a new spot? He goes, no. So we just hung out by a lake for 4 nights, which was actually a lot of fun.
That happens sometimes. You just find a great spot and you lose the motivation to keep moving. If it's not broke, don't fix it. I've done some hiking in the Sierras, but not a ton of it yet. I'm hoping this year to maybe start to expand a little bit further out that way.
The closest I came, I took an Amtrak through the Sierra, Madre, on the way to Reno. You go through Sacramento from Portland and that. But yeah, gambling again. Reno, they call Reno what the smallest, biggest town in America. There's neon light going over a road in Reno, but
there's some good casinos up that way.
I'm gonna say everyone in the chat room just for a second. We got William from William's Library, Fred from Read by Fred.
Hey guys.
MJ. Hello, MJ.
Hey, MJ.
Almighty Ohm.
Hello.
Read by Fred. Full day hiking, overnight hiking. Okay, I won't ask about when nature calls. Yeah, me and my wife glamp.
Nothing wrong with glamping.
back when I did my overnight hikes in California, there weren't as many restrictions when you were hiking, and I don't know if I want to tell Fred that nowadays you got to pack out what everything that you bring.
You want good Ziploc seals. That's all I can say about it.
We didn't have to do that back in my day. It was just bury it. That's all they said. But it's changed since then.
Definitely. Especially if you're near like a source of water, you don't want to leave like anything that's going to contaminate or pollute.
Yeah. I mean, I understand why they've changed it. It was different in the 80s.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah. Al lives in Canada. Lots of camping here. Okay.
There's fantastic camping up in Canada. I've been all the way through Alberta, the Yukon Territory, and down British Columbia. I did a 3-month camping trip, that went all the way around Alaska.
Oh Lord!
So I did
serious.
A bunch of stuff up there.
Yeah, Al lives in Niagara Falls.
Oh, right on.
A place I really love as well.
Yeah, I was there earlier last year. A lot of fun.
Very spiritual.
So, Kaitlin,
I haven't been there yet.
I think someone's in the chat room that you know.
That's my mom.
That's your mother. Okay.
Oh, hi, Mom.
You got family members watching. I see. My wife does. My wife never watches my channel, so I can.
Well, I'm gonna have to be on my best behavior tonight.
Not at all. My parents are cool people. They're both hippies from
Oh, cool.
My mom actually.
So I can vape in that.
We're totally 420 friendly and everything. My mom is the one that got me into bookish social media because she has a little free library. And she started an Instagram for her little free library. And I was like, oh, this is cool. I read a lot. I should get into this too. And so it's all her really that got this all started. That's
cool.
Yeah.
It is cool.
Yeah, very. Yeah, my mom got me into reading as well.
Nice.
I bet a lot of us, our mothers got us into reading.
I would think so.
That'd make a good tag, wouldn't it? Like a mama's tag or something. Yeah. I have to start thinking about that.
Yeah,
your mama's tag. Good.
See, they just left, in my house. They just left books in the basement on a shelf, and just didn't worry what book I picked up or whether it was age appropriate or not. Say, if you can read it, you can read it.
Yeah.
I think my mom's a pretty fierce advocate for reading as well. She always made sure we had a lot of books in our house, and like same thing, if you can read it and you understand it, go for it.
We have Farah here too. She says, if I live closer to you, Kaitlin, I hike with you all the time. Hubby and kids don't enjoy it, but it's one of my favorite things to do.
Well, Farah, if you're ever in Vegas and you want to go for a hike, please definitely reach out. I'm super friendly, love to meet up with people, coffee, hikes, whatever.
Yeah, then you can hit the buffet.
There you go.
That's what I like, gambling, and I like the buffets. I chow on shrimp cocktail and prime rib. That's all I eat for a whole week.
Perfect.
A weekend.
We got Brian from Bookish. Hello, Brian.
Hey, Brian.
Hi to Caitlin's mom. And MJ saying hi, everyone. Your mom says sounds great. And Almighty Om, the only great ideas come when hiking.
Huh?
Yep. Okay. We're currently caught up with comments, which is kind of rare, but so Kaitlin, as I said, we like to start off, just describe a book that you've recently read or currently reading that you would like people to know about.
Well, I have the two that I'm in the middle of right here. So I started this morning, The Storm We Made by Vanessa Chan. This is a World War II historical fiction, but it's set in Malaysia, or in Malaya as they called it at the time. So this kind of overlaps between the end of the British colonization and then the start of the Japanese invasion during World War II. And I'm really enjoying it so far. I'm about 60 pages into it, and it's about a family and the different obstacles that each of the family members are struggling with during this occupation. I was interested in it because I read a lot of historical fiction, but a lot of World War II historical fiction in particular is either centered on like Germany and like Nazi invasion, or when it features parts of Asia, it seems to be like more in Korea or in China. And so I was really excited to see a book set in Malaysia and to learn a little bit about that part of the occupation. So it's going really well so far. It's an engaging book. It was hard to put down this morning when I was reading it.
Is that a new publication?
Yeah, it just released actually in January. It's a completely new release. Book of the Month featured it for January, I think December or January, I can't remember. But yeah, it's a very, very recent publication. And then I'm also reading, I'm challenging myself to read one book a month in Spanish. So this one is called No Estoy Roto by Yese Leon. And this is means I'm not broken. It's Jesse's memoir. This is a local San Diegan author, and it's his memoir. He is a child of an immigrant parents, and he is dealing with like his sexuality and coming to terms with who he is in his community. And he has some violent things that happen to him, kind of overcoming some of his trauma and things like that. So I'm working my way through this pretty slowly. It's well written, but at the part that I'm at right now, it's mostly about his family and like how his parents came to be in the States, and just setting up like the family structure and everything. But it's an interesting book so far.
That's cool. It's really good that you can read books in multiple languages.
Yeah.
I tried to teach myself Spanish through Duolingo, and I got to a point where they were doing the subjunctive tense. And, you know, it's all about swapping your vowels at the end. And I'm a horrible speller to begin with. You know,
yeah.
It's just like really difficult unless you want to write everything down beforehand. And so I sort of stalled out.
I can see that. I think that I found for me, when I was learning Spanish, that really the only way that I can effectively learn is just by immersion. I worked in a taco shop when I was 15, and I spoke no Spanish. And the gentleman that I worked with during the day spoke no English. And so we were there 8 hours a day, and we couldn't communicate with each other. So I started kind of just learning out of necessity and boredom. But if I had to sit down with like a textbook and try to learn like in a formal structure, I don't think that that's very effective. Well, I know it's not very effective because I took 4 years of French and I barely speak French. But I never took any schooling in Spanish, and I can speak it fluently. So
that's cool.
It's just one of those things.
Okay, Alan, what have you been reading?
Well, I finished Midnight's Children.
Oh,
Me and Scott at Bookish Bryant finally finished that, and the group read of War and Peace. It's a reread for me, so I'm just kind of waiting for people to catch up. But there's quite a few people active on our Voxer group with that. And then you, the Mighty Om, and I are reading the Bhagavad Gita. So I finished it, and I'm rereading, listening to it again. But the main thing I am immersed in, and don't tell Scott about this because I shouldn't have even started it till next month. But I'm like a third of the way through Moby Dick, my first time reading it, and just loving it. I got a brand new copy, Barnes and Noble Classic. I like these editions, so I'm marking it up. And then I got a little book I'm making notes in, and I'm making little drawings and whatever I think of, you know, little quotations and stuff. So I'm really enjoying it. Here's a little fish. But that's what I've been reading, mostly.
So as Alan said, I'm reading this too. It's part of my project to read more about all the 5 major religions, to go through the major texts and then go through some fiction or autobiography around it. So this does not read like a religious text that you would normally think in the Abrahamic religions, and it's just really fascinating. And the commenter here is very good, I think, with the translation, because he has an introduction to each chapter, just because there's so much in the culture that as Westerners we don't understand, especially the names. Of course, you know, there are these names that go on for like 12 letters or 15 letters, and you're going, wow. And then some of the translations. But there's a
lot of common names too, though, that you're familiar with, like comma, and you know.
But that's not a pro. But he leaves most of that untranslated because he says it has no equivalent in English. Basically, learn a new word.
Well, if you can learn to pronounce Dostoevsky, you could learn to pronounce, the names in the book too, right?
But it helps that I'm also listening to the audio at the same time, so you can hear what I presume is the correct pronunciation. So that's fascinating. And then
they are.
I have this on my Kindle. It's Helsinki Homicide, Cold Trail. This is basically a police procedural set in Helsinki. And it's not like an American mystery book, even though they're police investigating. And the big crime in this one is there was a murderer who was sentenced to life in prison. And I guess it's very unusual for someone in Finland to be sentenced to life in prison. It's usually manslaughter, but they made it life in prison. So in the first chapter, his father has died. And he's allowed to go out to the funeral, which in the United States, in and of itself, would be highly unusual, I think. And then he has a guard watching him. He says, I got to go to the bathroom. He goes, okay, be back in 10 minutes. And he just sneaks out. And so the whole thing is the police trying to find this escaped murderer. And they're going through it, and it's coming clear that he may have been set up from the beginning. So it's fun. Again, the same thing. There are some names in Finnish that just don't do well in English. And I'm glad he's not Americanizing it, because sometimes you will read books like this where they will, if you read like Dostoevsky and Fyodor Dostoevsky, go Frank someone. You go, no, it's not Frank. So I'm enjoying that one.
I have to say, Alan, I'm really impressed with your stack of books there. I like all of those books that you were holding up. I'm just like so intimidated to read War and Peace. It's such a chonker. Every time I pick it up to think about reading it, I'm just like, oh, I don't know. I have such a fraught relationship.
Yeah, I was the same way. I read it though in 2023 in January and wanted to reread it again like almost immediately. And then Mark, a Book Time with Elvis, it was talking about reading it in a group thing, and we finally got around to doing it, so I jumped on that too. We'll probably be reading it into next month the way we're going. I mean, the first time I read it, I read it leisurely, and it took like 5 weeks. I read it by myself with audio and with 2 translations. I got like the newest one here, Anthony Briggs. And he like basically I took the French out, or like so you don't have to go to the end notes and back and forth. But I also read the mod translation, and that's a good one. Then there's even another one that people like. They call it the PV. Another, like, I think husband wife team. Somebody in the comment or Greg will know.
Well, yeah. I read War and Peace 2 years ago for March of the Mammoth or some other group, but you just have to sit down and read it. I mean, it's a really good book. Now the problem is you're going to have so many characters with so many names, and
that's all the character list.
You annotate your books, but you just read it and go along with the flow. There are some very long chapters of digressions, and the funny thing is, a lot of people talk about how much they dislike the digression, but I actually
like a lot of philosophy and religion, his philosophy and religion, and a lot of war. The Napoleon, and get to know about all the wars. And
Pierre converted to Masons.
Freemason. So I love that part. There's a character called Asif who leads them into Freemasonry. Go ahead, Greg.
No, I was about to say, I mean, it's just one of those books that you have to sit down, clear your schedule for a month.
Yeah.
Or depending on what you're doing, the way I did it was I said, I'm going to read for an hour or 2 hours every morning, and then read something else.
Okay, maybe I could do it like that
Yeah.
if I was gonna kind of like drag it for a longer period of time.
It's hard. I mean, I have found as I've gotten older, even over 2 years, I'm becoming less and less patient with reading 2 books at once. It's just I want to.
I like reading 2 books. Well,
I know.
go on.
I always have like 3 or 4 books going because the ADHD part of me is like, I need a little bit of this, and then I get tired and I need something else, and I managed to juggle
Well, what
them.
I'm impressed with you about, Kaitlin, is that you read so many new books in that. I'm really envious about that. In fact, you agreed to buddy read with me, right? Later on in
Yeah,
the year.
I'm trying to figure
Yeah,
out
you're
what to
gonna pick a good
suggest
one.
for you.
I'm sure it'll be good. Like a new one, it'll be great. I love getting turned on to new books and things.
Yep.
See, go ahead.
Sorry. I'm keeping my eyes peeled for something that I think is going to fit for you. Because, if I'm going to like pull out a new book, I want it to be a stunner, so.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
No worries.
See, my new
You have
books
to give me like a month, some advance time to order it and get it though, so I can get it off. Yeah, cool.
Yeah, definitely.
You see, my new books are the BookTube prize, so technically I'm reading a year behind.
That's still pretty new. I mean, I read books that are not new as well too. I mean, I have like some books that are on my TBR that are, within the decade, and I've been challenging myself to try to read a few classics here and there because I really, really lack in classics. I'm like the typical story of having, a crusty, boring teacher that taught classics in just a, horrific way. And so that's why I like have tended to avoid the classics. And so I'm trying to challenge myself to read them a little bit more. So last year I did get through some James Baldwin and some Zora Neale Hurston. I read Daniel Keyes, just a handful, just to kind of dip my toes in the water with some, more exciting ones. And then I'm hoping this year to maybe start picking up some of the ones that seem a little more intimidating to me, I guess.
Yeah, see, I have a James Baldwin buddy reading partner, Patrice Jones, and she just started a channel. So we've been friends for at least 4 years. Because every February we read a Baldwin. We're reading Giovanni's Room.
Such a good book.
Next month. I've never read it. So.
That was one of the few ones that I can say that I've actually read. I read that one and If Beale Street Could Talk, and both were fantastic.
You see,
great.
The only James Baldwin I've ever read was his short story Sonny's Blues.
How was it?
I haven't read that one. See?
It's a really good short story about basically about a narrator who's is it his brother or his friend who's addicted to heroin and is a jazz player, at the same time. But
yeah, we've read a lot of his essays and his. There's a good biography, David Lehman, I think, with a lot of great photos in it. Pretty relatively new biography we read last year, but.
So I'm gonna go through the comments. We have Zap. Hello, Zap. I know you've been here for a while. You've been here for a good 13 minutes, 10, 13 minutes. So William says, I pick up books to read from Mom's bookshelf all the time. I really don't know where her books end and mine begin. Fred, that's great. Reading in Spanish is a great way to keep up your language skills.
Indeed.
Ariane, hello. Almighty Om. I was watching a scholar speak on Proust and his Temps Perdus. She suggested that you do not need to read French to read this book. Not sure on that. She's saying that you don't need that a translation's okay.
There's so many great books I'd love to read in Spanish, like 100 Years of Solitude. I'd love to read in Spanish.
Great in Spanish.
Yeah, I bet.
Now, see, when you talk about 100 Years of Spanish, I guess Garcia Mezquez was really impressed with, was it Gregory Rabassa, who did the English translation? He said he really got the flavor of the book.
I've read it in both English and Spanish. And yeah, it is a pretty solid translation. You don't have like a lot of times when I read books that have been translated from Spanish to English, especially if they have like a lot of colloquialisms, I end up giggling because the translation is kind of funny, but it doesn't, his translation work is very, like the English translation of that one is very smooth and makes a lot of sense.
I'd like to read that in Spanish.
Let's see. Juan Rulfo Paramo. Pedro Paramo. I can't really see the smaller
Pedro Paramo. Pedro, how do you pronounce that, Greg? Pedro. I've read it like twice and I still don't get it.
Pedro Paramo.
Oh, shoot, Greg froze up. I think this is bad luck. There he goes. I'm not, I get, I'm.
Oh.
I guess we lost him for a second.
No worries.
No worry. So Beth Hendy, my parents were the same with reading. I remember finding everything you wanted to know about sex, but were afraid to ask on the shelves when I was a freshman in high school. I hid that in my room. That's not the worst book that I found on my parents. I don't know whose book it was. It could be my older brother's, my father's. Well, I guess it could have been my mother's, but I don't think so.
Maybe that was a plant so that your mom could like not have to have the like awkward conversation.
Well, when I tell you the title of this, you're gonna say it's probably the title was The Anal Lovers. It was a pornographic novel.
That's funny.
Which dealt with, well, you know. Yeah. And I read the first chapter and I said, maybe not.
Yeah, it's fun when you find things you're not supposed to, for sure.
You know, I mentioned the details on one of my other videos that people go like, oh, because it's even worse than you can imagine. I like the separate commonplace book, Alan, a good way to extend the mind and keep the books legible. Here's Alan again.
Maybe,
maybe not. There we go. Third time's the charm.
My bad. Yeah, I was talking about I got a technician coming out for my Wi-Fi Friday, so it's unbelievable. I mean, I'm not that far out in the boondocks at all, but anyway, sorry about that.
No trouble. So Ariane loves The Notebook, Alan.
Oh, you mean this that one?
I bet that's it.
Is that what she said? Oh, yeah. I mean, I like to keep a little journal. What's going on? There's picture of Moby Dick.
The drawings are cool. I wish I was like more artistic in that way to like sit and doodle while I was reading.
Yeah, I can't.
There's so many great quotes in Moby Dick. You know, like I'd rather sleep with a sober cannibal than a drunken Christian. I gotta laugh out of that. And all the names of the ship, the Pequot, and who's the cannibal guy with the blue tattoos all over? Queeg. There's so much humor in Moby Dick too. It's so funny. Now there are kind of boring parts, but not as many as I thought. You want my story about Moby Dick? I'm just getting around to reading it like bucket list because all my life through grad school, I'm a Joycean. I like to read the life and works of James Joyce. And I had a friend in grad school who was a big Melville nut, and I just didn't read Moby Dick out of spite. And one of my small claims to fame, the famous poet, a late poet, Norman Doobie, he's a Norton poet, so he's in all those big Norton anthologies and shit. He dedicated a poem to me. It's all about it's not all about my lack of Melville, but it's about Melville and the inside story. It's why he dedicated it to me. But yeah, I'm just getting around to reading Moby Dick.
I still haven't read that.
It's not hard. It's not hard. It's a good little adventure, It's like Wilbur Smith, Greg. You ever read his pirate stuff?
No.
Wilbur Smith? No.
Wilbur Smith? Oh, what? Wait a second. Wilbur Smith, he did a book on set in ancient Egypt, I think.
Yeah, he does pirate stuff too, though.
All right.
Huh.
I've only read the one about ancient Egypt.
Yeah, I like him. I've read a few of his novels, not in decades, but.
So, Al, I suggest Huxley's Island, as it is directly his vendetta. Very Gita-influenced religion is a big part of the story. Well, maybe after I finish the Gita. I have that on my Kindle.
Yeah, Al's mentioned that in the Boxer group too. Or I think he's also mentioned it in the end of the World group.
Yeah, I think he liked the island.
Yeah.
So
I must get around to reading.
I love the Notebook at A2. Some nice, hearty classics you have going, Alan. The religion books sound really interesting, too.
Yeah, thanks, Farrell.
Yeah, thanks. So, Kaitlin, I was intimidated, too, but I'm loving it. I'm in the Boxer group with Alan. It helps to read in the group.
I would imagine so, with so many
She's one of the ones reading it, actually.
Nice.
Yeah, I read War and Peace in a group. It was Miss Reads a Lot had a group every year. And she did War and Peace in March 2 years ago, I guess.
Well, I'll have to keep my eyes peeled for the next group read of it, and then maybe
it will come back in a year or two. No, I'm sure it will. Keeping the words is helpful. Loving kindness is a word invented to translate words in Hebrew, Hest, and Sanskrit, Mati, and Polymet.
Oh, yeah. What I like about the Bhagavad Gita is, there's 4 types of yoga. People always think yoga is just getting into different positions and that, but it's more like there's service yoga. That's the highest form, evidently. But I've read the Gita before too. A lot of stuff is coming back to me, and hopefully I don't go off again here.
Not
but
right.
The 4 kinds of yoga. Intellectual yoga and like different paths. I like reading books about India too, like the Midnight's Children was set in India. Pakistan.
What I really remember a lot about Midnight's Children is, I read it, I guess my early 30s, is that it really taught me about like India and Pakistan, which is not a history that is taught in the United States very often.
Not at all. No. The partition. And there's so much interesting stuff about it too. It's like a fascinating piece of history, and we hear like nothing about it.
And you learn about it in Midnight's Children. Oh, India was once a bigger country. There's now 3 smaller, or 3 countries. So, but he did not talk about the separation of Bangladesh in that one in Midnight's Children as much. He just talked about Pakistan and India.
I just actually read a more modern book about it called Independence, and it's by Chitra Banerjee Divakaruni. It's a shorter book, but it is about a couple different sisters, and they get separated by the partition and kind of the struggle to get the family all back together. So that was kind of my first time delving into that subject. And it was fascinating. It was, a piece of historical fiction, one that, I knew little about going into. And the author wrote it in such a way that it almost read like a thriller, because you're like anticipating if this family is going to get back together. And it kind of spurred me to read a lot more on that subject, because, we here in the US, at least in my age group, I feel like our history teaching was so like geared around like world wars, and kind of excluded a lot of the history of like Asia and a lot of the history of Africa and South America and stuff. And so now every time I like read a book where I get a subject like that, it just spurs me down a huge rabbit hole of wanting to read.
No, I kind of remember that when I was doing history, it really stopped at World War II.
Pretty much.
Like no school wanted to touch Vietnam and even in college they didn't.
Oh no.
Because it was that was the 80s, and Reagan was all the rage, and
yep.
Good.
Mm-hmm. You know what?
It's
One of my
interesting.
favorite Vietnam. Sorry, Caitlin. Is
Fine.
Vietnam novels is Dennis Johnson's Tree of Smoke. You ever read that, Greg? Tree of
I
Smoke.
did.
It's a brick.
It is
It's
a
a
brick.
brick.
I don't remember a whole lot about that. When you talk about
See, I
Vietnam,
was lucky enough to meet him, so I've read a lot of his books.
okay, yeah.
But I read that book with audio too. Go ahead. I interrupted you again.
My favorite Vietnam novel is probably there's two that sort of go hand in hand. They're by the same author. Going After Cacciato and The Things They Carried by Tim O'Brien.
Nice.
Oh yeah, Tim O'Brien.
I just read last year The Mountains Sing by Nguyen Phan Ke Mai, and she's a more contemporary author, but she wrote a really beautiful book about Vietnam's history and in the war. And she just came out with a second novel called Dust Child, which was dealing with the children that were left behind by American soldiers that were like half Vietnamese, half American. So that was a really, really interesting book. And I'm actually currently reading a book called M by Kim Thuy, which is a collection of like vignettes about the Vietnamese diaspora around the world and how, you know, they've basically like all of the survivors of the Vietnam War have been, you know, scattered. So that's been a really interesting read. It's really short. It's only maybe 120 pages.
The title is just ringing a bell in my head. It was The Dutch something?
Oh, Dust Child.
Dutch Child. Okay. It's been mentioned somewhere before.
Might have been on my channel because I definitely talked about it when I read it. Yeah, it was released, I want to say last year, like mid-year. So
was it nominated for the BookTube prize?
It might have been. I'm not sure.
Hold on. I can actually look at the fiction. Let's just see if it was nominated. Let's take a look. The Dutch Child. No.
Dust. Yeah.
What?
Dust, like dirt. Dust. Dust Child.
No, not part of it. Oh well.
Okay.
So that's Al's. Here's Ariane. War and Peace has more humor than I was expecting.
That's good to know because it doesn't like give me the vibes of being like a funny story, you know?
Well, it's not like Confederacy of Dunce's funny humor, but you know, it's not that kind of humor, but it does have its places where it's funny.
Sure.
Yeah, inside jokes and that, and gallows humor.
Sounds like
war stuff.
I'm good with the gallows humor, so.
Yeah. Again, with Moby Dick is very humorous too. Really funny. Laugh out loud.
Good to know.
Good. I'm gonna go through the comments real quick. I know there's at least one comment for Kaitlin coming up. So, science has shown that dividing the focus, multitasking, can lead us to less creativity and poorer focus and concentration, as well than retention.
That might be true.
Could be. Oh, yeah. MJ's also with me. She's volunteered to be a BookTube prize judge in both categories.
I volunteered this year too. It's my first time. Yeah.
Which category?
I volunteered for both, but I'm happy to read for whichever.
Oh yeah. Okay. Yeah. I didn't know that. I was looking for a person to go over the fiction nominations with. I didn't know.
Oh yeah.
Oh well. Beth agreed, Greg. As I've gotten older, I can only read one book at a time. Harder to focus. MJ, I just reread The Fire Next Time for the band
Baldwin
project.
Yeah, Baldwin.
No,
I have that one.
I have Go Tell It on the Mountain. That's, of course, Go Tell It's probably been banned too. That's James Baldwin. The scholar suggests that a non-French speaker can pick up his In Search of Lost Time in French and read it. LOS. Okay. Oh, so here's Kaitlin. Here's Fred. Non-bookish question, if that's okay, Kaitlin. I believe you are a chef. What was your inspiration to become one?
Yes, I am a chef. I work professionally in kitchens. I've been doing it since I was 15. I'm 35 years old now, so for 20 years. I started cooking or becoming interested in cooking because when I was a child, my mom and dad both were working, and so my grandmothers would take care of me. And my one grandmother, to keep me occupied, she would turn on PBS, and there was Julia Child and Jacques Pepin and a couple other TV shows that they used to air at the time. And so that kind of initially intrigued me. And then when I was probably like around 10 or 11, the Food Network became really, really popular. It was like the golden era of the Food Network. You had like Emeril Lagasse and Ming Tsai, all of these like fantastic chefs with really engaging, dynamic cooking shows. And I just started watching it going, I could do that. And my mom was working at the time, later hours. And so I started periodically trying to cook dinners like when I was like 11 or 12. And I think by the time that I was in my teens, I was doing a lot more of the cooking. And I don't know, it just kind of stuck with me. I feel like chef folk are kind of my folk. We're like loud, not always the most polished, lots of tattoos, rock and roll, lots of traveling and things like that. And it just, once I got into culinary industry, I just realized like, these are my people here,
I did not a lot, but in high school, I was a cook in a few places and everything. You know what position I always longed to move up to?
What?
I would like to be a saucier.
Takes a lot of skill. Yeah. Skill and patience.
So Kaitlin,
it's ready now.
Do you have a preferred cuisine that you like to cook?
I'm actually kind of an emotional cook. It depends how I'm feeling, like what I want to cook for the day. My education, growing up in Southern California, my parents live about 20 minutes north of the border. So we grew up with a lot of Mexican food, really, really good Mexican food. And then we also were in a predominantly like Vietnamese and Filipino community. So I grew up with also tons of really good Vietnamese and Filipino food. And then I went to culinary school where I was classically trained. I went to Le Cordon Bleu offshoot. So I was, classically trained in like French and European cooking. My current partner is Cuban, but he grew up in Africa. So I've been learning all about Cuban cooking and African cooking. And then, I've traveled so much to so many different places as well that at this point in my life, I can cook almost any type of food.
Now, when you're talking about California, you're talking about San Diego, or because I was out there for like 3 years. I love San Diego.
Yeah, my parents are right in the middle of San Diego, right by Miramar Marine Base, like just kind of smack dab in.
Yeah, I would be in La Mesa. Oh, so you mean Pendleton?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Pendleton. Pendleton's about 30 minutes north from where my parents are.
Yeah, I love San Diego. San Diego.
Great area. I miss it. It's just way too expensive.
Yeah, we were talking about before we went live. When I was,
and then they even step it up with Coronado Island. That's even more expensive.
Oh yeah, that's
you got to take a bridge over there.
That's
where I was staying for a weekend, Coronado Island, and I saw this tiny little house, smaller than my basement, $1.2 million.
Oh my God!
2 years ago, and I'm sure it's like $3 million now or something like that.
It probably is. It's just outrageously expensive. Everything. I mean, even in just the normal parts of the city, but that's like a really wealthy area, so I'm sure that the pricing is astronomical there.
I'm just laughing about the size of your basement. You say that's a pretty big house.
When I first moved to Las Vegas in 2008, I came out here for college, and my first apartment was only about 100 square feet smaller than my parents' house in San Diego. So it gives you context that like at 18, I could rent an apartment here in Vegas that literally is the same size as a house in San Diego. And it's just because it's so unaffordable there. So.
Yeah, I never had my own apartment in San Diego. I always lived in like houses and rented a room out. But the houses were really cool. They're historic, and you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And you take the bus or the trolley to the beach. I like Old Town, San Diego, and
Yep.
that's where you catch the bus to OB or PB or bringing back some memories now, huh? I like San Diego.
There's so many great neighborhoods. It's like one of the things that I was telling Greg earlier is that like moving to Vegas, it was such a culture shock almost because San Diego, we have so many like amazing little local communities. We have like, it's a very diverse city. And then I moved to Vegas and it felt so sterile because when I first moved to Vegas, it was all about the strip and the casino life. And it's only been in the last maybe 5 to 10 years that there's now starting to be like local culture in Vegas. We're starting to get cool little communities and local bars and local restaurants and things.
So let's catch up with the comments. Al is going next to reading Salinger Island is about the only choice, to be honest. LOL. For Gita related novels. Okay.
Oh, yeah. Well, I'm down for Salinger all the time.
Hey, Bad. Hello.
Hey, Bad.
You've been sitting in the comments for a long time. Sorry about that. How long have you been in there? Ooh, 20 minutes. William, I don't read many popular classics because I won't review it. I want to share what I read, and I have nothing new to add about the classics.
Oh.
Maybe there's a lot of stuff that you can pull out some of these old books that can be related to more modern living. People saying hi to Bad. Hi, sweet friends. Where's your beautiful pet? I love how he looks at you with your thumbnails.
She actually just walked out the door, so Oz is taking her for a quick walk while we have a window in
Luna.
rain. When she comes back in, we'll try to get her on the video.
That would be good. I said I always love seeing people's animals in videos and lives. And
I know. I wish I had a pet. I might get a fish.
Fishes are cool.
Yeah, I mean, I used to have aquariums. My mother had aquariums, but I had like a big hexagon aquarium once, and I kept like 2, 3 of them going back in Tempe, Arizona, and I had them for years. And I had a dog, Angus, miniature schnauzer. I really like miniature schnauzers. But these fish, now that I mention it, I have dreams about them, about like not forgetting to feed the fish in my dream. Or cleaning the tank, and you go, oh God, there's some dead ones in here. Oh, never mind. Aquariums.
So here's Tom. Classics and Company, hosted by Micah Cummings and Ann Novella, are reading Moby Dick. You would be welcome to join.
I might have to check that out.
Yeah, I subscribe to both of their channels. I wonder why I didn't hear about that.
I'm mad that it didn't pop up in my feed either. Like, that's just what I need to get into it.
And this is Moby Dick, not War and Peace.
That one too, though. I mean, I'm lacking in all the classics, aside from
Moby Dick's a easy read. It's like reading Shadowram or something. It's just
Alan, I remember Moby Dick. There are some very heavy whaling chapters in that where he's just
kind of boring, but
it's not boring. It's just
detail
whaling,
Oh, I see.
Yeah, but then I kind of calm myself and go, "This is the best stuff I've ever heard about whaling."
I see what it is.
It's the most interesting shit I've heard of. Go ahead, Kaitlin.
Oh, they started a new channel. That's why it didn't pop up on either of their feeds, I think, because they shared it as a new channel. So it's literally.
Oh, and what's it called again?
Classics and Company.
Oh, okay, great.
Looks
I
like
knew it was a Discord. I didn't know they had as a separate channel.
Yes, I just happened to look on Micah's feed real quick to see where I missed it, and they're.
I got to get in because I'm hosting one of their books this year.
Nice.
I'm doing the Day in the Life of Ivan Denisovich, which is
Dostoevsky, or is it? No, who's that?
This is Soviet. And I'm also going to probably be doing the nonfiction book, Gulag by Anne Applebaum.
I say Kendrick's liberty neutral. Liberty.
Hey, people saying hi to each other. All right, let's just Say hi. Oh, here's Courtney. Hello,
Hey,
Courtney. I'm sure glad that taboo subject is a thing of the dark past. Taboo subjects are making a comeback in some
Jeez.
areas of this country.
Just in time, too.
Tell the story about how you got into reading. Love that story, Kaitlin.
So we kind of mentioned it at the beginning when my mom popped into the chat to say hi. But my mom is a big, reader. My dad is a big reader as well. My dad is really like focused on like historical fiction and nonfiction, and my mom tends to read a lot more. I mean, my mom reads almost all genres, but she reads a lot more fiction. And so I just was really encouraged as a young child to read very much. My parents read to me every single night when I was little, and then, encouraged a healthy reading habit as a teenager. And then I got into, like, as an adult, I've always maintained a reasonably healthy reading habit, but I got back into it like really intensely because my mom has a little free library, and she, posts on social media. She has a Bookstagram, and she posts all her like photos of what she's putting out in her little free library. And then she's gone next level. So she knows almost all of the little free libraries in San Diego County, and there's like a couple hundred of them. Every time a new one opens up, she brings them bags of books. Like at Christmas when I was there, we spent 3 days off hauling books to different little free libraries. She volunteers at a local library in San Diego as well. And when she comes to visit Vegas, we go visit all the little free libraries here. And she just got really involved into that. And it kind of made me realize like, oh, I read enough that I could post about books. And I don't really have, like, Oz, my partner, doesn't really read. So I was like, oh, I'd love to have people to discuss books with. And that kind of just dragged me into this community. And I started with an Instagram, and then I was like, I've always thought about having an YouTube, and I didn't even know that like BookTube was a thing. I wasn't following a bunch of booktubers and like, oh, let me get into this. It was just completely like, oh, what if I start posting reviews? And then I realized that there's like a whole community, and now I'm hooked.
Yeah, I mean, there's not a huge amount of little free libraries where I am. There may be maybe at a dozen in different areas, and some of them are basically abandoned, I think, or just don't get anything. There'd be like 1 or 2 books and religious tracts in there, and then some are stuffed.
Really? Wow.
There was one at a food co-op, and someone was sticking classic science fiction and fantasy books in there, and I'm like, okay, how many of these can I take out and not feel like I'm
stealing?
I know. Now, see, Greg, I can see you looking at in a co-op or something and looking at a bookshelf, but I cannot see you driving your car, stopping, getting out in the free library. I can't see that. We have quite a few in Portland too. Yeah. There's one I like to go to in the summertime because it's on a real steep hill, and I like to ride my bike down there. And we have those orange Nike bikes that look like they're electronic, but they're not. But they have a great governor in there or something. You don't have to pedal hard going up the hills. They're great. I get like I think $20 free every month, summertime. So yeah, Nike bikes. Thanks, Nike.
Well, on little free libraries, there's an app you can put on your phone, and it will tell you all the registered little free library. Some of them are not registered. They just stick out there, and you just have to come across them by accident, I guess.
It's a lot of fun. We actually like do road trips based on little free libraries now, which probably sounds kind of silly. But like Oz and I will go out to Sedona, and there's a bunch of them along the freeway on the way from Vegas up there. And they're in these little towns, and so it gives me a chance to like off haul books that I'm not planning to keep, and then hopefully it gives the little towns like infusions of new books. But I really find it just depends on the person that is in charge of the little free library, because I've run across the ones like you're talking about where they're abandoned or they just have like a bunch of generic, repeat books. But then you have ones that are really like carefully curated where the person's out there taking care of them every day. And it's such a joy.
Yeah.
And the thing that's really cool too is people like are making custom little free libraries now. So like in San Diego, there's one that looks like a Indian fortress. It was all carved out of wood. There's one that's a Viking warship. It's huge. There's some really cool ones. I saw one that was like a TARDIS from Doctor Who. I've seen Hogwarts castles, like just all sorts of really cool, creative, beautiful, artistic, different little free libraries. So it's a lot of fun kind of like scoping them out and stopping and visiting.
Yeah.
Now, you see,
There's one
I
here
would
that has
totally
a camera.
for a road trip on little free libraries. My wife would look at me like, I'm like, really? You need more books?
That's usually Oz's response as well.
Okay, talking to people. Hi, Courtney. The Return of Ferez Ali by Amina Ahmad is a novel about Pakistan, India, and Bangladesh. Very good.
I'm going to type that into my recommendations real quick.
Here's Zap read The Dust Child. Farah, The Mountains Sing is in my library holds. Glad to know you enjoyed it.
It's got a lot of tough subject matter, so just be prepared for that when you go into it. I mean,
Bad says, did you all see that vlog, Alan and Greg, on her channel? She was near an active volcano. It was so incredibly beautiful.
Oh, that was in Guatemala.
No.
In September last year, I went to Guatemala. So what Bat is talking about is I went to a place called Hobbitenango, which is like Hobbit land, basically. Like the owner of it took the Lord of the Rings and the Hobbit and created like a little theme park, and you can stay in Hobbit holes. So I rented a Hobbit hole for the night.
Wow.
And then the area of Guatemala that it's in, there's like 5 volcanoes that kind of ring the city. So you could see one of the volcanoes.
Well, that would be so cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'd love to go to Guatemala or Peru.
I've been there too.
I could get in some trouble down there.
It's easy to do.
True story.
I've been through about half of Latin America now. I think Guatemala was like my 26th country so far. But yeah, I've done about half of Central America and half of South America so far.
You see, my wife and I are not that adventurous. We're going back to Mexico in March, but we're going back to the same place we went to twice before, just because we like it. You can relax, and we're not really big into exploring. I mean, the first time we went down, we went to see Chichen Itzá, and what's the other Aztec ruin?
Teotihuacan is by Mexico City. That's the big Aztec temples.
No, this is the Gulf of Mexico.
Oh, like down in Cancun area?
Yeah, just a little bit south of Cancun, and it was really nice. It was really kind of fun going down there, and we had the guy. We there's a tour guide, and he was telling people what happened in the Aztecs part. And I remember this story. He was talking about how they would throw babies as sacrifices in the cenote. What are these cenotes? Mm-hmm. And there was this woman. She's obviously a young mother. Got so mad at this tour guide. Says mothers would never sacrifice their children. And I didn't want to say her. Says, yeah, they did.
Yeah,
I mean, it's horrible. But
are pretty well known throughout like the Aztec and Mayan empires.
I'd be taking some tours if I was down there, but you know what else I'd be taking? Some ayahuasca.
When I was in Peru, and that was the height, I feel like, of the ayahuasca tours. Like everyone that I was running into was doing but they have it really regimented there now. So like if I was going to do ayahuasca, I think I would want to like go out into the forest with a shaman and do it like the proper way. But now it's like you have like a retreat, and they have nurses and like doctors, and they watch you while you're on your ayahuasca trip. And it's like very, very much more strict than it used to be.
But it doesn't last that long. It only lasts for like 10, 15 minutes. So what I understand.
Yeah, the retreats that they do down there, you like keep drinking it. So you're basically drinking and purging for about 3 days. Yeah.
Oh, I'm talking about the stuff you smoke. Isn't ayahuasca you can smoke too?
I'm not sure about smoking it. I know that most of the people that I ran into it, you drink it, and it causes pretty severe purging because it is toxic. So a lot of people get sick, which is why they've kind of formalized it where they have nurses and people making sure you're not like getting dehydrated. And, you know, if you're having a bad trip, there's people there to like deal with it. So.
Yeah. Sign me up.
So Kaitlin, I guess this is bad. Has a question for you. How fast can you read, my friend? I always admire how many books you read and review.
It depends on the book, honestly. If I'm reading in English and it's not a super heavy book, I can usually say it's like 300 pages. I can usually get through it within the day if I'm sitting and reading pretty concretely. If it's in Spanish, I read a lot slower. I can read, like a book like this size could take me a week if I was really dedicated to it. It really depends on how into the book I am. For books that I'm really into, I can just fly through them, and then some of them drag. But on average, I usually read between 18 and 20 books a month or so.
Yeah, you work full time, so that's really.
I have a pretty good schedule though for work, and I will say that I do like intermix audio and like a hard copy. So I'll be reading like a hard copy at home, and then I go to work for a few hours and I might listen to an hour or two on audio while I'm at work. So that also helps speed up the process sometimes. But I do like, in terms of a physical book, like this book that I'm pretty interested in here right now that I started, I would imagine I'll have this done in like the next 2 days, probably.
Yeah, that's still that's still a pretty good pace.
Yeah, I try.
I mean, it's not Steve Donahue pace, but
No one's Steve Donahue. Yeah.
He's using a category all of his own.
Terminology, he might not say it, but I think he's kind of close.
Maybe when I'm retired, like I'll be able to do a Steve Donahue pace.
Well, I am retired, and the way you wake up, I have all day to read. Let me just fart around for a bit, and then you wake up. Wait a second, it's 3:00. How did that happen?
Oh, I feel it. Even on my days off, I like do the same thing. I wake up thinking like, oh, I'm going to get through a book today, or I'm going to read this and this. And then, food has to be cooked, dog has to be walked, things still have to happen. So.
Yeah.
Luckily, I'm an insomniac, so I get I get extra time.
Right on.
So Al was going, I was raised to be a saucier, a great saucier, the best line in Apocalypse Now.
Oh, I thought he was bragging, like that he was like.
I know, I guess it's a quote.
Saucier. Yeah.
Oh, so here's something, Beth. I made your meatloaf, Kaitlin. It was delicious.
I'm so glad to hear that the recipe came out well for you. That's like just a quick, I love that for a quick, easy, weeknight when I have to work. It's like, you can bang it together in 30 minutes and have dinner on the table. So I'm happy it worked out for you.
I'll have to look that. Is that a video you made?
It was a couple weeks ago. So I do a segment.
Can you tell us the secret ingredient?
In my case, I don't know if there is a secret ingredient in this one. I glaze it with a sriracha and ketchup, just adds a little bit of spice to it. But what I do is I have a segment right now. It's kind of not as regimented as I would like, but I do a recipe based on a book I've read. So I'll read like a fictional book, and if they mention a food, then I just write out a recipe and show how to cook it while I review the book. So that was a couple weeks back. I reviewed a book called Mercury. That's a new release, and meatloaf popped up several times in the book. So I just showed how to make my version of it, and it's a pretty quick, easy one. So
okay. I also make meatloaf occasionally when my wife's going to play pickleball, and
nice.
We lost Alan again. And the only thing I started doing is I do a pound of hamburger with a half a pound of sausage.
Nice. That adds some good flavor to it for sure. This one was just a beef one. It's a really quick, standard, easy weeknight kind of a meal.
Yeah. Let's see.
Oh, dog's coming back. Come here, Luna. Come here. Come here. Come say hi. Let's see if we can get her.
Hi, Luna.
She's all excited because she's coming in from walking in the rain.
So easy to make a dog happy.
Yeah, super easy. This one's like the happiest dog ever too. I've had other dogs that were like a little less cheerful, and this one is just all smiles all the time.
Alan may come back in a minute.
Okay.
So Kaitlin is a wonderful cook. I loved how she was proud of me using lard.
Yes, because lard gives so much flavor to everything, and people are so scared to use it. It's all about how you use it and how often you use it, not about using it at all,
So William has 2 aquariums.
I'm jealous. I would love to have an aquarium.
You know, I have cats, and if I had an aquarium, they would be on top of that aquarium going like, can I get that fish?
I bet. I scuba dive, and so I usually get my fish spotting when I go out scuba diving. But someday when I have a house, I would love to have an aquarium. Unfortunately, my current apartment has an addendum against aquariums because they break and flood and things like that.
Well, especially if you're on an upper floor.
I'm on the 3rd story, so
yeah, I could just see someone down below with a broken aquarium really getting mad.
Yeah.
Hey, Alan, welcome back.
There he is.
So, Ariane,
I'll just keep switching spots.
We'll be reading Les Miserables this year. I think in April. It's February to April, I think. No.
I've never read that.
Because I really want to read that, but I'm on this 100 book challenge, and that is just too long until I'm done.
It's another classic I haven't read, but I mean, maybe I just need to join Classics and Company and just
maybe
pick up
so.
all.
They have a lot of.
I
good
looked
books.
at I'm already subscribed to Classics and Company, and I have the bell thing, and I still haven't. I didn't notice the announcement, or I haven't noticed anything new from them. I don't know. Anyway, I digress.
Oh, here's your mother. I tried to add classics to mine. She's probably talking about the little free library, but no one takes them. Well, when Alan, when we did the Summer of Snopes in 22, I had a free copy of the Hamlet I was giving away. Offered on my video. No one took it up, so I dumped in a little free library. And a year later, it was still there. So,
oh no!
Wow!
I bet if I went back, my copy of the Hamlet would still be there today.
Yeah, you ought to go back there, Greg, and just take it back.
I should
just go back and take everything back.
It really depends on the neighborhood too, because sometimes like classics go really well in one area, and then other areas they don't. It's been interesting, like seeing in my mom's neighborhood specifically, like what books tend to go really well. Like neither of us really read romance at all, but romance goes super well in her little free library. So it just
imagine like romance would just really take off, because the people who really like romance just can go through a book a day,
right?
Because those, I mean, even I could read a romance book in a night, probably. But,
they're fluffy, yeah.
Just today, downstairs in my apartment complex, there's like 3 or 4 boxes filled with like Vern Michaels and Nora Roberts, and they were picking through them. So some of the girls.
They seem to always stay popular.
Yeah, I'm going to see. I'm bound to get kicked off again because you guys are freezing up. So I apologize. If I do again, I'll just appear in the comments.
Well, you do what you can, Alan, and you're having your Wi-Fi redone on Friday.
Fixed by
next week.
Yeah, exactly.
So Farrah was saying it was fun to hang out with you guys and great to know Kaitlin more. Have a good night. Well, goodbye, Farrah.
Good night, Farrah.
We have a new person, Surprised Puppies. I don't think I've seen Surprised Puppies here before, but hello.
Hi, Surprised Puppies.
Latin America is just on another level. If you really embrace the culture and history, you are in for a treat. Well,
I agree.
I have always loved reading books set in Latin America and Central America. Some are really good. Do you have I'll get to the ones. Do you have a favorite novel from Latin America?
Ooh, that's a good question. 100 Years of Solitude is probably one of the few like classics that I could say is one of my favorites. I'm trying to think of like a more recent book. That's not so. The most recent favorite of mine in Spanish is not from Latin America. It's from Spain, and it's the El Cementerio de los Libros Olvidados, which is the cemetery of the forgotten. Sorry,
I'm sorry. It's Cemetery of something books.
Forgotten books.
Books.
And it's by Carlos Ruiz Zafón. He was he's a really well-known Spanish author. A lot of his books have been translated to English, and they were pretty popular a couple years back. I read those in Spanish. Laura Esquivel, she's another fantastic author. She wrote like Water for Chocolate, but she has some other books that are really fantastic as well. So just tons. I have actually a huge stack that I just got from a friend of mine from Instagram donated like a huge collection of books to my mom. She was moving back to Argentina, and so she had a ton of books in Spanish. So I ended up taking home like a huge stack of books in Spanish to read. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of some of the ones that I really liked. I really liked the first one I read was Terra Nostra by Carlos Fuentes.
Okay.
And I don't know if that's. It didn't seem like it struck a memory chord.
I haven't read that one. No.
I also liked 2666 by Roberto Bolaño.
That's an excellent book. I read that one like end of last year. That was one that was kind of a chonker. I was a little bit intimidated about that, but I really ended up enjoying it. The writing is very interesting, and it's a kind of a strange book, but it's very engaging for sure.
It is a strange. I mean, I know it's technically unfinished. But from what I understand, it was like, I don't know if he was just in the polishing stage at that point.
I actually ended up picking up another book of his. It's a little novelette. It's not more than like 50 pages. Can't think of the name off the top of my head right now, but that was in the stack of books that I just received. Oh, I'm actually reading Our Share of Night, which is a translation from Argentina. That is like a more contemporary book, just horror. It's about vampires and La Guerra Sucia and like the whole genocide that occurred in Argentina in the 70s. So that's been really interesting.
Which one is that again?
Our Share of Night.
Oh yes. Okay.
Yeah.
I have that one on translation on my Kindle, and it's one I really want to get to, but it's like 500, 600 pages.
It's long, yeah, but it's so good. You're gonna really enjoy it, I think, because I know you like horror, and I think you're gonna like the writing style of this.
But it's not just a horror novel to understand. It's just sort of a literary crossbreed,
right? But it definitely has a lot of the horror elements very present. It is literary, and there is like a lot of political setting. It definitely delves into, like I said, the dirty war in Argentina, the 1970s politics. But there is a lot of horror elements that are incorporated, and it's been very engaging. I'm about halfway through it so far, and I'm really enjoying it.
I remember one other. It was Latin American. It was House of Spirits by Isabel Allende. Mm-hmm. But that was Chile and not Argentina.
I have a fraught relationship with Allende. I have read a couple of her books, and one of them I enjoyed, and then two of them were kind of like boring and not very memorable for me. So I don't know if I'm just picking the wrong books or what the deal is with her.
Well, I have this sort of theory about some writers, and I sort of picked this when I was in university. We had a professor who says, some authors only have a few books in them. Mm-hmm. And some of them continue to write after they're done. And I kind of think Isabel Allende is that one of those authors where she had this fabulous story to tell in the House of Spirits. Mm-hmm. Because she lived through it in Chile. Right. And then she was a famous author, and she says, well, when's your next book?
Yeah, I read her one of her more recent releases, Violeta, and it was like very ambitious. It like tells the story of like a woman and almost 100 years, and she lives through so much stuff. But it just was one of those books where I felt like it like tried to do too much, and it kind of made it boring because it was so dragged out. I don't know how to explain it very accurately. It had a lot of promise, but not a lot of execution for me. And so that was one of the books for me with her where I was like, it's okay, but definitely not, top of my list or anything.
Yeah. And I'm looking for a book set in Mexico to take down on vacation with you when I go to Mexico. Just so I'm reading something semi-local.
I'll have to look through my stacks and see if I can come up with a recommendation for you.
Okay. All right. So I enjoyed the chat. It's time for our dinner. Maybe we should buddy read War and Peace, Kaitlin. Your mother wants to read War and Peace with you. That's kind of neat.
We might even be able to get my dad to read it with us too. Like we could do a whole family buddy read, honestly.
That would be that would make an interesting vlog to have a family reading War and Peace together. I'm surprised, but that's crazy fast. Have you or could you read the Bible in a few days?
Definitely not. So that's what I was saying about like when you're reading quickly, it like usually the books that I can get through really, really fast are usually a little like lighter, easier content. Something like the Bible where you're reading, usually older fashioned writing, and it's a lot more like to think about and a lot, just a lot more technical reading. That would definitely take me more time. And I have read the Bible. I took world religion in college. And so I have read through the Bible, and it was definitely something that took me much, much longer to get through. Just as well, because when I'm reading something that I feel like, I want to get all the meaning out of it and really like take anything or take as much messaging as it can give, I prefer to take it a little slower and take more time and really think about what's being said. So yeah, usually the books that I'm getting through really fast are not going to be quite so heavy.
Yeah, I mean, I read Night of the Crabs by Guy N. Smith.
Okay.
In an evening, like from 6 to 10. But it's a book about giant killer crabs. It's not like
right. Those types of books where you're just like having fun, where like every single word doesn't matter necessarily. Like you can get through them really, really fast.
Okay.
Or even like something, like I said, like this one where, I'm super invested in this story. It's really, really interesting. I'm devouring every single word. I can get through it, but the writing is very fluid and smooth, and it's modern writing. It's not, writing from 100 years ago that I'm trying to like translate into how I would say things nowadays.
Yeah.
So, a little different.
So
Hey,
we got Angelia. Hello. So here's back. Surprise puppies. I have Molly surrounded by shamrocks on my tattooed right arm. Okay. 2666 in the Sonoran Desert, Nogales, Mexico, across the Arizona border. Yeah, he renamed his town. I forgot. It's not when he wrote it, but
yeah.
All right. So Alan's going to try your meatloaf recipe.
Nice. I hope you enjoy it. It's an easy one. I know there's a million ways to do it. It's just the way that I do it because it's quick.
Well, when I look up meatloaf, I usually look it up on the internet and just pick one.
Right.
And then I just found one that said use use some sausage in there. Said,
right. Adds a lot of flavor.
That's actually a really good idea. So Angelia agrees. I think the professor was right. Yeah, I just some authors write too many books and don't know when to call it quits.
Yeah, I think that publishing pressure, to always like keep putting out books at a certain rate too could also affect it. Like maybe if she was writing one book every 10 years, she would write fantastic books. But if she's putting them out every 2 years, maybe she's not really taking the time to like develop the concept in her head,
Right. Now, there is a mystery author, Tana French.
Mm-hmm.
He's based out of Ireland.
Right.
And she publishes a book every 2 to 3 years.
Mm-hmm. But
her books are very well constructed and very well written. It's not like you said the quick reads of a lot of mysteries. Like she puts a lot of effort into these. And I was reading some comments from people who like your books. They said, "Why don't you just write faster?"
That's super fast. I mean, if you could put out a book every 2 to 3 years, you're writing really fast. I mean,
I think so, but some authors put about a book every year or more than one book every year. Like
I think you see that a lot with like romance for sure. In that genre, you'll see, an author put out a book every year, every 9 months. And then I see that a lot with thrillers or like the serialized thrillers, like
right.
Clive Cussler and CJ Box and those guys. But I also wonder for those kinds of things, they must have a team of like ghostwriters that are working to put out a book every 6 months. Like I can't imagine that one individual person is sitting there just nonstop writing without a break ever.
Well, I think some authors do it. There was an author back when I was in high school. He was writing Michael Moorcock. He wrote the Elric saga.
Mhm.
And when he was writing, he was in an era where a book was 150 pages long in his genre.
Right.
You know, and he mentioned that he could write a book a week, just
Okay.
about. And you know, it reads like it sometimes, but he had a really good imagination, so he could pull it off. And he has like probably hundreds of books that he's written. Now, in his later life, I think he slowed down and started saying, maybe I want to write more than just all this pulp science fiction. And he got still in science, but got a little more serious in his works. And maybe he just got older and didn't need the money.
Maybe so.
Oh, Angelina brought up a good author, Donna Tartt.
Mm-hmm.
Have you read any Donna Tartt?
I haven't. So I don't tend to like dark academia very much. I've tried multiple authors, and that genre just for me doesn't seem to click. And that's mostly what Donna Tartt writes. And so I've been hesitant to try her. But I know everybody raves about The Secret History. I actually do own a copy of one of her books. I think it's called My Little Friend, which is like, I guess, her least liked book.
Her least liked book, yeah.
Yeah. But I may eventually give The Secret History a try. I just, like I said, it's like probably one of my least favorite genres. And so I've kind of been like, we'll see, maybe someday.
I think that's her only dark academia book. Of course, she's only written 3 books in like 35 years. So.
Right. I think her other one, is it Goldfinch?
Goldfinch won the Pulitzer Prize.
Yeah.
12 years ago, something like that.
Yeah. I'm sure they're fantastically written books. I just, like I said, that was been my hesitation with it, is just that it seems to fall into that area.
Yeah. So, actually, the only book I've read by her is The Secret History. Mm-hmm. And it's really kind of funny because she went to Bennington College, and I had applied to Bennington College. And the thing is, you have to be really, really smart to get into Bennington College. And I was not that smart in high school. And you also have to be really, really rich to get into Bennington, because it was like one of the most. But I later was like, wait a second. I could have gone to college with her if I was a little bit smarter. But no, it's actually a very good book. It made me pine for not learning ancient Greek.
Okay, that's a good feeling.
So Angelia says she takes, we mentioned it, 10 to 12 years to write a book. The little friend was her favorite. So there we go.
Well, maybe I'm in good shape then. I think Angelia and I have pretty similar tastes. I watch her videos and I'm often like, oh, that book sounds really interesting. So
start with that one if you got it.
There you go. I mean, and then I can clear a book off my bookshelf too, which would be, kill 2 birds with 1 stone. Perfect.
Okay. We have caught up with comments.
Nice.
That is cool. So, what other BookTube events are you looking forward to in 2024, if any?
So I am trying really hard to participate in more like readathons and buddy reads this year. I know Misery May is coming up, which is hosted by Gem of Books and Gunpowder Fiction Plot, which I really enjoyed last year. It's literally all about reading miserable books. So that's a readathon that I'm really looking forward to. I actually always look forward to Middle Grade March. I don't really ever read kids' books at all. I'm actually the baby in my family. There's no children younger than me. I'm the last bandy on both sides of my family. And so it's kind of fun in the middle of March to kind of check out what's popular in kids' books. And I've been surprised the last couple years picking up a couple of the Newbery Award winners, how good some of the middle grade books were. I was like kind of picturing very, very childish juvenile books, and then was really surprised to find some really poignant reads. So I'm looking forward to that. I always look forward to Nonfiction November because, it gives me a little push to get some of the nonfiction books that I've been hoarding off of the shelves. Trying to think what else. I always try to read for like all of the celebratory months, like Black History Month. I usually create a really great TBR for Black History Month. There's AAPI Heritage in May as well. June Pride. I've been always really excited to do my Pride TBR. So I'm looking forward to a lot of that. And then, yeah, I've been reaching out to different booktubers and trying to set up buddy reads. Like I know that Alan mentioned at the beginning of this that we talked about buddy reading. He wanted to try out something that's like a newer, more contemporary book. So I've been on the hunt for something that I think Alan will enjoy. And then I joined a couple book clubs this year. So I'm participating in a books in translation book club. So that's been fun reading.
That sounds interesting.
Sorry?
This is really, really kind of interesting. Have you got anything lined up in that book club?
Yeah, so that's through a Patreon that I'm following, and it's through Scott's channel, Gunpowder Fiction Plot, and so they do one translated work a month. So this last month, what did we do? Oh, they did "I Who Have Never Known Men" by Jacqueline Hartman, and then next month it's the Notebook, not the Notebook, something Notebook, Secret Notebook. It's a Spanish translation. It wasn't a book that I was familiar with, nor an author that I was familiar with. So I'm excited about that. And that's like a kind of a more international group of people as well. So it tends to pull books that I might not hear about here stateside. So that's been fun.
That's cool. I remember the one year we had the translated fiction in the BookTube prize, which unfortunately
Forbidden Notebook. Sorry, that's the one. Angelia just mentioned it in the comments.
I just saw that down there. Forbidden Notebooks. That's one I have not heard about.
That's the one.
Is that the Spanish one?
Yeah, I think it's, if I'm remembering correctly. I just saw it briefly and I went to see if I could get a copy from the local library. But yeah, I believe it's Spanish to English.
Well, why wouldn't you just read the Spanish?
If they have the Spanish available, I might opt for it. But a lot of times, like my local library won't have it. So then I have to go buy the copy in Spanish if I want to read it. And sometimes, depending on the availability, I have to special order them. Like all the Carlos Ruiz Zafón books that I got that were in Spanish, I had to special order and wait for like a month and a half. So it just depends. Yeah, so Alba de Céspedes, that's the author of it, and it's translated into English. She was an Italian-Cuban feminist writer.
Okay. I have not heard of that one at all. So
yeah, it was a new one to me too. I hadn't heard of it either.
Now, Misery May sounds also kind of interesting.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun last year. I mean, you know, it was very cathartic. You're reading all these miserable books and like it gives you a chance to kind of release any stress or pent up feelings. So I really enjoyed it. I tend to read a lot of miserable books anyways. So it's like right up my alley.
So what's considered a misery book or a miserable book?
So they had like all sorts of different prompts. One of them was to read a book by Thomas Hardy. You know, he's known for being really miserable. And there was all sorts of other prompts, like, you know, geared around like books that make you feel like sad or rip your heart out, style of books. So I read historical fiction. I read a lot of contemporary fiction, and a lot of those types of books feature those types of themes. And so I just kind of read like I normally would, honestly. Yeah, they did a buddy read of one of Thomas Hardy's books. I'm not sure which one it was. I think it might have been Jude the Obscure, which I remember reading when I was way too young. This was actually one of my horrible memories of classics, and one of the reasons that I strayed from classics was that
I love Jude the Obscure. I haven't read it in a while, but it's just one of my. I could just see I could have been Jude. You know,
I'm sure if I read it as an adult, I would appreciate it. But I think I read it when I was like in 6th grade. I think a teacher
6th grade is
7th grade. It was really, really young. It was way too young for the book. Definitely like probably borderline inappropriate age to read it. And it was dry. It was boring at the time. I didn't understand much of it. It wasn't an enjoyable experience.
Well, you know, as I remember, it's just the culture has changed so much since then. Is that it'd be very hard to have a Jude ostracized for being separated from a wife and joining another one. And it's like,
right.
It's like no one cares anymore.
Right. Let's see.
So a couple other comments. Misery May is good. She mentioned the group read was
Oh, it was
Jude
good.
the Obscure. Alan, Jude the Obscure was Joyce's favorite Hardy novel. Okay.
It's the only Hardy novel I've read so far.
I've actually read all his 5 major novels. So,
well, if they pick another Hardy novel this year to read, then maybe I'll jump in for the buddy read for that as well, or the group read.
Okay. Any more comments from people or any other subject that you would? I know you talked that you were also being a judge for the BookTube prize.
Yeah, I signed up for it. It looked like so much fun last year. I honestly didn't even know that there was a BookTube prize until last year when I started seeing everyone, like mentioning, oh, I'm reading for the BookTube prize, but I can't talk about what I'm reading and I can't give you any opinions. I can just state that I read this thing. And I was like, oh man, I want to be part of the secret club.
It is. It's a lot of fun. Now, I think it's safe to say now we've only nominated books so far.
Right.
So it's, I was talking with Elizabeth, was it last week or the week before, about our most anticipated books that she just did nonfiction. So talking about what books are you really looking forward to that you hope win? Are there some top contenders?
I don't have the list handy and I honestly don't remember it. I can see if I can pull it up really quick off of the top of my head because I nominated the books on the list like literally the first day he sent the email and then I kind of just forgot about it since then.
It's okay.
But there was a lot of books that I had read. I was surprised when I was looking at it. I was like, oh, this is hard to narrow it down. Let me see if I can pull this up really quickly.
It's okay because, I use the BookTube prize to catch me up with books, nonfiction, fiction that I should be reading or should have read. So
sure.
I only had read 1 or 2 books on that on both lists because I'll read a lot. I know for fiction, my one was The Maniac by Benjamin Labatette.
I've heard such good things about that. I've been meaning to get to it.
Yep. Here's a comment from Fred. Kaitlin, when you hike, do you do any orienteering? Is there anything you bring with you that you can't hike out with?
Hike without. I'm not sure what orienteering means. I'm assuming like navigating.
Compasses?
Yeah, that's what I'm assuming. I don't really use any kind of compass or anything like that. Typically, we use cairns. Like the trails are marked with little cairns that you follow. And even like when you're doing technical scrambling and climbing and stuff like that, there's usually cairns along those routes as well. So that kind of helps to navigate. And then, I use landmarks and things as well. Is there anything you bring with you that you can't hike without? Good hiking boots, pretty necessary. I have a really nice weatherproof pair that I took with me to South America that I use in the winter. And then I have a nice rubber soled pair of Merrells that I use during the summer when we're like doing more of the scrambling and stuff. I always bring a first aid kit with me. I have like a handful of things in there that I've just, seen over the many hikes that I've done that are necessary. I've done a couple like search and rescue hikes as well. And there's been occasions where you're like looking for somebody that's been stuck out in the wilderness for a couple days. So that always makes me think about like having, like a space blanket and a couple things in case of an emergency scenario. I always bring a headlamp and spare batteries because I've been out in the dark a couple times where like my batteries were dead in my lamp, things like that. Always more food and water than you ever expect to need because every once in a while something goes wrong and you're stuck longer than you want to be stuck and you don't want to be hungry and thirsty. Stuff like that.
Now I presume that like when I did the hike in the Sierra Nevadas, like we had to make a plan.
Sure.
We say this is where we're planning to go. This is when we plan to be back.
Yeah.
And so people know like, oh, well, they didn't show up when they said they would.
Definitely. We always communicate. I will usually text my parents, like if I'm going to be out somewhere remote, especially like if I'm just going out to like the local trail to do a quick day hike and it's well trafficked, I won't necessarily take that precaution. But if I'm going like backcountry, far away from civilization, not going to see anyone, I definitely will communicate like with my parents or a friend, like, hey, this is where I'm going to be. This is when I should be back. If you don't hear with me, hear from me within a couple hours of that time, then something might be wrong. And we do actually, I should say that we use All Trails, which is a great app. If you're hiking, you can download maps of the trails onto your phone so that even if you're somewhere without cellular data, you can still access your maps for making sure you're like in the right place and you know how to get back and everything. That's definitely saved me once or twice if I've like got disoriented. But usually I think I do a pretty decent job. And then the people that I hike with typically usually do a pretty decent job of kind of keeping track of where we are and how to get back and that kind of stuff.
That's cool. Now, what's the most unusual thing you've encountered while hiking?
The most unusual.
Or do or like it could be like a rare animal or.
I know, I'm just trying to think because I've got, well, so the most unusual, I guess, like object up in north of Vegas here, we have a mountain called Mount Charleston, and there's a wreckage of an airplane on the mountain where a little small plane crashed on the top of the mountain. So as you come up to the peak, you can find the wreckage there. In the little like geocaches and like the register books that are on top of peaks, I find interesting stuff all the time. People leave like little toys, they leave snacks. I found like packages of cookies and things in the geocaches, which is always nice. I've occasionally found books and things stuffed in there that people have left like for, spiritual reasons and things. In terms of animals, what's the coolest animal I've seen? I've seen cougars. So those are pretty like both cool and like, hey, stay over there. In Alaska, I saw grizzly bears a couple times, which is another thing where like very cool from a distance. Actually, one of my really good hiking stories, I was in Grand Tetons National Park and I was doing a hike like around the main lake. And as I was coming down the trail, like a little small black bear popped its head up out of a berry patch. And it was like a juvenile. It was just barely away from its mama. And, black bears are not typically super aggressive unless you corner them. And so in this case, you just back up, give it space and wait for it to eat its berries and then leave. So I'm standing there watching this black bear, me and the person I was hiking with, and we're taking photos, a good ways back. And up comes like a handful of people on the trail behind us. And I'm like, hey, stop. There's a bear right there. Just like hang out. We're waiting for it to pass. And this woman goes, I'm not scared of a black bear, and picks up a rock and chucks a rock at this black bear. And all I could think is, well, there's 5 of them. I better put them between me and this bear really fast. And so me and my hiking buddy are like backing up, trying to like get distance. It ended up startling the bear, and the bear did end up running away. But I just was like, and this was probably my first experience dealing with bears because I did this 3-month road trip through like Canada and Alaska. So by the end of that trip, I was much more experienced with bears, but this was like the first time I'd ever seen a bear in person. And so when I got up to Alaska, I was talking to some people up there that I was going scuba diving with, and they live up in Alaska. They deal with bears all the time, and I'm telling them this story, and I'm like, am I crazy? Like, this seems like an insane thing to do. They were like, yeah, no, you should never throw stuff at bears. Like, why would anyone do this?
Well, I mean, my question is like, first of all, unless the bear is going to be attacking soon,
right?
Then you just say, hey, nice bear, stay away from me.
Even then, like, why expend the energy throwing something?
Right.
You'd be better off like climbing a tree or figuring out how to get away from it,
First of all, there's no reason to attack a bear unless you're being attacked.
Right.
Unless you're just a cruel person. It's like,
I think she was just trying to look cool in front of her friends, but she was definitely like old enough to know better. And like, it was one of those things where you watch it in slow motion where you're like, what is this person thinking? So that's probably like one of my crazier hiking stories.
It's also because I have been to Alaska once, and you go to the towns in Alaska, and all their trash cans have these seals on. I just found that so exciting. I guess you have a lot of bears out here.
Yeah, everywhere from like Grand Tetons all the way northwards, pretty much anywhere you camp, it's all bear proofed. You have the bear boxes. So like when you have your, camping food and like all your, even the stuff that you're cooking with, not just the food, like it all has to be stored in lock boxes or like locked inside your car. Or if you're like remote camping, you have to have them in bags and like tie them up.
I was about to say, when I went in the Sierra Nevada, they said, bring rope, throw it over a branch.
Right.
And if the bear is really interested, just let the bear take your food.
Yeah, they can have it. And it's interesting, like even things that you wouldn't think of, like brushing your teeth. And when you like spit out your like toothpaste and stuff, they taught us to like spray it in an arc so that you distribute the smell of the toothpaste. So you don't have like one really like minty, fragrant spot to attract bears.
I don't remember doing that, but
yeah, I think that might be more modern stuff. But like the same thing, like if you're like washing your dishes, like the gray water from washing your plates and stuff, you're supposed to like swing it in a big arc so it just distributes all the food particles instead of like concentrating it.
No, we didn't do that because I remember one night late at night I got up and we for whatever reason, I can't remember the reason, is that I took the flashlight to the lake edge where we wash our dishes, and I noticed all these fish and they're gobbling up our little food particles. And I told Buddy, get the fishing line.
Right on to catch dinner.
I don't think we caught anything. We were dumb high school kids, so we were just lucky to be able to go out on our own.
I get it.
And his friend always asks the best questions. What do y'all think about that book film 127? I don't know.
The one where the guy cuts his arm off? I think that might be the one where the guy gets like stuck in a boulder. He's like in a crevice and the boulder rolls on his arm.
Where he has to amputate his own arm?
Yeah. He's like stuck there for a couple days. I think that might be that one. I'm not sure though.
I've only read the internet stories on that one.
I haven't read it or seen it. I'm not really like a super big movie watcher, so I don't typically have any kind of like movie references. As for the book, I haven't read it just mainly because I don't know if I want to read about a guy having to saw his arm off. But I mean, it's a pretty impressive feat. If this is I'm
right. I mean, yeah. Well, I guess if you're in that situation, that you have to do what you have to do.
Right. If you're gonna die, I mean, lose the arm for sure.
Yeah. Here's Fred. Do you enjoy reading books on hiking or the history or any of the cultures and cuisines you make?
Okay, so I'll take that like two parts. So I do enjoy reading books on hiking. I actually just in December finished a book called The Trail of the Lost by Andrea Langford. It was in my top 10 nonfiction reads for the year, and that was about the Pacific Crest Trail. Andrea Langford actually worked professionally doing search and rescue for many years, and then she retired from that. And she occasionally would consult on cases as a volunteer. And so this book was all about volunteer search and rescue and basically like image spotting, where like when someone goes missing, people would like scour images of the mountains looking for like, a backpack or like a bright orange spot that might be somebody's jacket and things like that. Talked a lot about search and rescue, the logistics of search and rescue, the risks of search and rescue, and then like how volunteers could be used more effectively in missing persons cases. And it focused on 3 specific cases, none of which have been resolved. But it just talked about, dealing with the families and how to coordinate volunteers and like the online communities. So that was really a fascinating book for me. I really enjoyed it. I also read a book called Stranger in the Woods. It's not specifically hiking, but it was about.
That's a good one. The first one was also on your 10 best of the year because it's to start ringing bells when you're talking about the woman who used to be search and rescue.
Yeah, that was number 10 on the list.
That was number 10. And then The Stranger in the Wood. That was a weird dude.
Yeah, but it's really interesting. I mean, like there's parts of me that like understands like why someone would just walk out into the forest and be like, to hell with society. And so that's not specifically hiking, but like I think that hikers and people that are interested in nature and psychology and stuff like that would be pretty fascinated by that book. I've read a couple other hiking books as well. Some of, the typical ones like Wild by Cheryl Strayed and, there's so many books about like people hiking out into the wilderness and like looking for spiritual moments.
Right.
So, you know, I mean, every time I find one of those that sounds interesting, I pick them up.
Have you ever read A Walk in the Woods by Bill Bryson?
No, I don't think I've read that one.
Oh man, that is, well, Bill Bryson spent many years in England.
Okay.
And he's an American, but he moved to England, I don't know, 10, 15, maybe 20 years, and came back. I think he was in his mid 40s, early 50s. And he decided to get in tune with America again. He was going to hike the Appalachian Trail.
All right.
And he invited his friend, his name is Katz, to walk his trail with him. And they were just woefully unprepared.
Okay. I'm typing it into I have a list that I keep of like recommendations.
Yeah. The funniest thing is his friend Katz loved Little Debbie treats.
Mm-hmm.
And when he's out hiking, and he figured this backpack was too heavy, he started tossing food into the woods.
Okay.
But he was keeping his Little Debbie treats.
Well, you know, a Little Debbie is not a bad snack. I mean, it's like if you start to feel a little bit like woozy, a little low on sugar, I mean, it spike your blood sugar up.
I you know, the actual food probably would be better, but it's just it's a comedy in nonfiction because he's a humor writer. So
it sounds like it. I mean, there's so much that can go wrong, especially for like such a big trail. You know, it's one thing to go out on a day hike. You know, there's only so much that could really happen in that scenario. But like when you're doing something like that Appalachian Trail, like you're looking at multiple months of hiking, and you know, even the most experienced hikers really struggle with this kind of stuff because there's all the physical, you know, like blisters, and your feet hurt, your body hurt, you get exhausted. It just is. There's so much to overcome in a situation like that.
And I mean, I read the book probably 20 years ago, but still, okay. It's a way to encounter the wilderness without actually having to encounter the wilderness.
I get it. For me, it's more, I think when I read these types of books, it's like, you know, for me, hiking is like a really big stress reliever. I have a very high pressure job. And so getting out into nature kind of helps me to decompress and, you know, forget about the stress of, you know, normal day to day. And so when I have weeks where I can't get out, it's nice to pick up a book and read about somebody else getting to get out and have that decompression.
Absolutely. Okay. Well, we're about an hour and 47 minutes in, so maybe about time. Unless you have another couple subjects you want to talk about.
No, I mean, I could answer the second part of this question real quick if you want.
Sure.
And
second part.
It's actually honestly dinner time for us anyway, so this is perfect timing. But the history of any of the cultures whose cuisine you make, I do read history of cultures. But honestly, more than reading, I like to visit cultures and visit countries and like learn about the culture more hands-on. But definitely every time I visit a new country, I end up bringing home books from that country. So like like I said, I was in Guatemala in September. I ended up coming home with like 4 books from local Guatemalan authors. So not necessarily specifically about the food aspect of it, but about the history of the civilization. And some of them are, you know, about history. Some of them are about like more modern stuff. But yeah, I definitely enjoy immersing in the cultures just in general. And it doesn't even have to be about like food that I'm cooking. I just really, really enjoy deep explorations of culture and history, period.
Yeah, like I said, I've been trying to read a book from every country in the world.
Ooh, you're going to struggle when you get to Tuvalu.
I'm going to struggle with a couple of them because some countries just don't have
publish. Yeah.
They don't have a lot of publish. They don't get translated in English.
Right. I kind of wanted to do like a similar thing, you know, read a book, a country. And then I started looking into it. And then, like I said, I got to the list of like Tuvalu. My fiance, he grew up in Angola in Africa. Trying to find a book from there is, you know, really difficult. Just because, you know, it's very insular. Like even visiting is difficult. So trying to get a book that's translated from, you know, Portuguese to English and then is published, it just, yeah, it doesn't.
It's hard.
Yeah.
I mean, there's some countries I just know that, and even some relatively well-known ones like Panama Canal, like Panama.
Right.
There's not a lot of translated literature. I mean, you have no problem because you can just read Spanish.
Spanish, right?
But
yeah, finding the translation is hard.
It is. But okay, I think that's a good place to end this.
It is, yeah.
Kaitlin, thank you so much for coming on the show. Really appreciate having you.
Well, thank you to you and to Ellen for having me as well. I was so excited when you guys mentioned, having me on here. I was like, this is cool. I've watched this many times, so it's fun to get to participate.
Yeah, well, as I said, we're down to 6 watchers, but anyone on BookTube is welcome to contact us to join as a guest host, because we like all sorts of people coming in all sorts of genres. It could make things sort of interesting.
Right on.
If it's not really a genre that either of us are familiar with.
Right on. Well, I've added so many books to my list tonight. I mean, all the recommendations, both in the chats and both from you and Alan, are, constantly adding books to my TBR. So
okay. Well, again, thank you, and everyone watching. I hope you have a great night.
Bye, guys.
Bye.